The universe was wide, silent, and endless. Stars burned like tiny candles across the black sea of space, each one holding secrets of life, death, and forgotten civilizations. Among those countless stars, a signal was born. It was not loud, it was not strong, but it carried something powerful: desperation. The message drifted across the void, crossing dust clouds, slipping between frozen comets, brushing past systems that never even knew it was there. It repeated again and again like a whisper that refused to die. "Please, someone help us. We are dying." The cry came from a world called Eritha, a small colony of the Erin people. They were not a warlike race. They were farmers, builders, singers of soft songs under silver skies. Their hands were made for soil, not weapons. But now their green fields were blackened, their homes shattered, their children hiding in caves. Machines from beyond the stars, cold, ruthless raiders, had come like a storm. The Erin had no army, no defenders, no allies, so they sent their last hope into the dark, a fragile signal begging for mercy. Many heard it. Great empires with fleets large enough to cover entire systems intercepted the message. They analyzed it, measured it, and dismissed it. "Too far," they said. "Too costly." Others scoffed. "The Erin are weak. Their fate is their own." Some feared the raiders and whispered, "If we move, we too will be destroyed." And so, the stars remained silent. The Erin prayed. Days passed. Their signal wandered from one corner of the galaxy to another. It carried with it the sound of fear, the cry of children, the last breath of a dying people. But still no help came, and then the signal reached Earth. It was picked up not by emperors, not by councils of cold rulers, but by scientists in a listening station on the far side of the moon. At first, they thought it was interference, but the pattern repeated. Words formed, broken but clear, and in those words they heard pain, they heard truth, they heard the sound of a people with no hope left. The scientists sent it forward, across channels, into the ears of generals and leaders. In a world already divided by politics, by nations, by struggles of their own, the debate began. Some argued it was not their problem. Some feared that answering would bring enemies to Earth's doorstep. But outside the walls of power, the people heard too. News spread fast. On screens across cities, towns, and villages, the Erin voices echoed. A farmer in Kansas paused his work and felt the weight of their plea. A teacher in Nairobi wiped a tear as she heard a child's frightened cry from another world. A fisherman on the coast of Japan muttered to himself, "They sound just like us." The reaction was the same everywhere. Silence, then anger, then determination. Humanity remembered. They remembered what it meant to be powerless, to face giants stronger than you, to hope someone, anyone, would come. Earth had known wars, disasters, and the cold indifference of stronger nations turning away. Humanity knew what it was like to be ignored, and so a fire lit inside them. For the first time, the people of Earth shouted with one voice, "We cannot ignore this. If no one else will answer, then we will." It did not matter that the Erin were strangers. It did not matter that the galaxy called humanity reckless and young. What mattered was simple. Someone was crying for help, and humanity would not turn away. On Eritha, the Erin still huddled under burning skies, waiting for death. They did not know far across the galaxy, a world of humans had already made its choice, and as the fragile signal continued to echo through the stars, somewhere deep in the darkness, a new answer was forming. Not a whisper, not a plea, but a promise humanity had heard, and humanity was coming. The signal had crossed half the galaxy before reaching Earth. Now it was no longer just a whisper, it had become a question, burning in every heart. Will humanity answer? Inside great halls of government, leaders gathered. The message was played again and again, its broken words echoing against walls filled with maps and flags. Generals studied it with cold eyes. Politicians whispered about risks. Scientists warned of the unknown. "They are too far," one leader said. "We do not even know this species," another argued. "Why should we bleed for strangers?" came a colder voice. The debate turned bitter. Some spoke of resources, of fleets too small, of dangers waiting in the void. Others whispered of Earth's history, of times when powerful nations had ignored weaker ones, letting them suffer. They remembered how silence had always led to regret. But while the leaders argued, the people had already decided. Across Earth, The cry of the Irin was broadcast on news screens, in schools, in markets. It reached farmers in wide fields, workers in factories, children in crowded cities. Everyone heard the desperation. Everyone heard the plea. In homes, families looked at each other with heavy hearts. "They are just like us," one mother whispered as she held her daughter close. In a quiet cafe, an old soldier clenched his fist, remembering what it was like to fight for survival. Students filled the streets holding signs that read, "Answer the call. Do not be silent." For once, humanity's divisions seemed to shrink. Old rivalries between nations, old wounds of history, all faded in the face of that simple, painful truth. Someone was dying, and no one else would help. The pressure grew. Leaders could no longer ignore the voices rising outside their doors. Crowds gathered, chanting, "If not us, then who?" The sound grew louder than politics, louder than fear. Humanity, for all its flaws, carried one gift. When others turned away, humans stepped forward. At last, the decision came. Earth would send a fleet. It would not be the largest in the galaxy. It would not carry the most advanced weapons or the strongest armor, but it would carry something no empire could measure: resolve. Engineers rushed to prepare ships. Old vessels were refitted, new ones pulled from shipyards before they were ready. Crews volunteered faster than rosters could be filled. Soldiers left behind families, writing letters they might never send. Doctors packed supplies, teachers trained as medics, engineers carried toolkits instead of weapons. Humanity was not going to war for conquest. They were not marching to expand territory. They were answering a cry for help. In every port and launch station, goodbyes were said. A young pilot hugged his little brother, promising, "I'll come back." A doctor pressed her forehead to her father's, whispering, "If I don't go, who will heal them?" Lovers held hands one last time, tears falling but pride shining through the sorrow. The world watched as the fleet gathered, hundreds of ships, some mighty, some small, lifted from the earth like sparks rising into the night. They were not perfect. They were not ready, but they were united. In that moment, the galaxy shifted, for while others looked away, humanity had chosen a different path. They had chosen to risk everything for strangers they had never met. On the colony world of Aretha, the Irin huddled in ruins, thinking no one cared. They believed their signal had vanished into the cold silence of the stars. But far away, on blue oceans and green fields of Earth, millions of voices whispered the same promise. "Hold on. We are coming." And so humanity's decision was made, not by the powerful alone, but by every ordinary heart that had heard the cry. In the halls of power, the leaders signed the final order. In the skies above Earth, the fleet turned its engines toward the stars. The choice was no longer in question. Humanity had answered, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. The fleet of humanity rose from Earth like 1,000 shining arrows. Their engines burned bright against the darkness, leaving trails of fire as they left behind oceans, forests, and the faces of loved ones. For many of them, this would be their first journey beyond the safety of their homeworld. For some, it might be their last. On every ship there was silence at first. The weight of what they were doing pressed on every heart. They were not explorers seeking new worlds. They were not conquerors chasing riches. They were saviors, answering a call that no one else dared to answer. And that knowledge made the silence heavier. In the medical ships, doctors sorted through crates of supplies. They checked and rechecked every vial of medicine, every bandage, every scanner. A young doctor named Layla whispered to herself, "Somewhere out there a child is waiting. I must not fail them." In the troop transports, soldiers sat in rows, helmets in their laps. Some stared at old photographs, some prayed, some clenched their fists in quiet determination. A sergeant stood tall before them and said, "We are not going to fight for Earth alone. We are going to fight for those who have no one. Remember that. Hold on to it." In the engineering decks, crews worked tirelessly. Sparks flew, engines hummed, and hands covered in grease tightened bolts again and again. An engineer laughed softly, saying to his friend, "Funny, isn't it? We built these ships to protect ourselves. Now we use them to protect someone we never even met." And in the command ships, captains studied star charts. Their eyes traced the long route to Aretha, through empty void and dangerous zones. It would take weeks of travel, maybe longer. Every moment mattered, for on that distant planet, the Irin still waited under skies filled with fire. The journey tested them. Days turned into weeks. Outside the windows, the stars never changed. Vast emptiness stretched in every direction. A silence so deep it almost swallowed hope. Crews grew tired. Some longed for home. Some feared what they might find when they arrived. Would they be too late? Would the Aaron even still be alive? But in that silence, humanity's strength grew. They told stories. They sang songs. Soldiers shared food with engineers. Captains walked among their crews. Doctors comforted the fearful. They reminded each other why they had left Earth. One night in the mess hall of a transport ship, a young pilot stood and raised a glass of water. To the ones who called us. They may not know us, they may never thank us, but when they needed someone, we came. The room erupted in cheers. For the first time, the silence of the journey felt lighter. Yet danger lurked. The raiders were not blind. Their machines patrolled the edges of systems, hungry for more prey. Twice humanity's fleet was forced to hide in asteroid fields, engines off. As shadows of enemy ships passed close, hearts beat fast, but the humans did not falter. They knew what waited at the end of their path was worth every risk. As the fleet pushed deeper into unknown space, the messages from Eretha grew weaker. The signal stuttered, broken by static. Once only a fragment came through. "They are burning our sky." Another time, "Please, someone..." Each broken word was like a knife in the hearts of the crew. It reminded them of why they could not turn back, and so they pressed on. On Earth, billions watched the progress of their fleet. News screens lit up across the planet, showing updates from deep space. Families prayed. Strangers held hands in silent vigils, and children drew pictures of spaceships flying to save the helpless. Humanity was no longer watching as separate nations. They were one people bound together by a single mission. At last, after endless days of travel, the stars ahead began to change. A new sun appeared, distant but real. Around it circled the world of the Aaron, the place where the cry for help had been born. From the windows of their ships, humanity saw smoke rising from the planet's surface. Even from orbit, the fires were visible, scars across a once green world. The silence that followed was heavier than any before. Everyone knew this was it. The journey was over. The real trial was about to begin. Humanity had come, and they were ready to fight. The human fleet slowed as they entered the orbit of Eretha. For a long moment, no one spoke. Every screen, every viewport, every eye was fixed on the planet below. What they saw would stay with them forever. Eretha was burning. Great black scars cut across fields that had once been green. Cities lay in ruins, smoke rising like dark pillars into the sky. Rivers glowed red with fire and ash. Entire forests were gone, replaced by lifeless craters. From orbit, it looked as if the world itself was crying. The Arin's signal had not lied. This was not a small raid. This was annihilation. On the bridges of the human ships, silence fell heavy. Soldiers clenched their jaws. Doctors pressed hands to their mouths. Engineers stared wide-eyed at the destruction. Even the captains, hardened by years of service, felt their hearts sink. Then in the distance they saw them. Dozens of raider ships patrolled the skies of Eretha. They were dark, jagged machines built for one purpose, to destroy. Their engines left scars of fire behind them. Their weapons flashed like storms, raining down death on what remained of the Arin. The raiders noticed the humans almost at once. Their ships turned, forming into sharp lines of attack. The silence of space was broken by a mocking transmission. Another weak race, the raiders sneered, their voice metallic and cruel. Another prey to be crushed. Run now or burn with them. The humans did not run. On one command ship, Admiral Rhea stood tall. Her voice carried through the fleet. "You heard them. They think we are weak, and they think we will turn away. But they do not understand who we are. Today we show them." Her words spread across every ship, reaching pilots strapping into cockpits, soldiers holding rifles, medics preparing their kits. For the first time since leaving Earth, there was no fear. There was only purpose. Engines roared to life. Shields flared, weapons locked. The human fleet, though smaller, surged forward like a tide of fire. The battle began. The sky above Eretha lit up as human ships clashed with raider vessels. Beams of light tore through the dark. Explosions burst like suns, shaking the heavens. Human pilots flew with desperate courage, weaving between enemy fire, striking where they could. The raiders had numbers. They had stronger ships. But humanity had something else, heart. Every human who fought knew why they were here. They remembered the signal. They remembered the voices crying for help. They fought not for conquest but for lives, and that gave them strength no machine could match. Below, on the surface, the Arin looked to the sky. They saw streaks of fire cutting across the clouds. At first, they feared it was only more death. But then something different happened. Raider ships fell, crashing into the ground, and for the first time in many months, the Arin saw hope. A child hiding in the ruins of a farmhouse tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Look," she whispered, pointing upward. "The sky is fighting back." Her mother wept because she understood. Someone had come. The raiders were surprised by the resistance. Their voices turned from laughter to anger. "How dare you fight us? You are nothing. You are prey." But the humans pressed harder. A squadron of small fighters broke through enemy lines, striking a raider carrier in its heart. It exploded in a blaze so bright that the ground below lit like dawn. Cheers erupted across human ships. The tide of battle began to shift. Still, the cost was heavy. Human ships were torn apart, some vanishing in flames. Pilots cried their last words before silence swallowed them. Marines waiting to land gripped their weapons tighter, knowing many of them would never return. Yet no one turned back. Admiral Reyes's voice rang again. "Remember why we came. Hold the line. Protect the innocent. We will not fail." And so humanity fought on. The first sight of Erytha had broken their hearts, but it had also lit a fire inside them. They had seen what the raiders had done, and they had chosen their answer. Humanity had come not as conquerors, but as guardians, and they would fight until the sky itself was free. The sky above Erytha had become a storm. Human ships and raider machines clashed in fire and fury. Explosions painted the heavens, falling like broken stars onto the world below. For every raider ship destroyed, another took its place. Their numbers seemed endless, their weapons merciless, but the humans did not falter. They fought with grit, with stubborn courage, with the knowledge that if they failed, the Arin would be lost forever. Inside the troop transports, Marines waited for their signal to land. The ships rocked violently as enemy fire struck nearby. Some soldiers closed their eyes, whispering prayers. Others gripped photos of loved ones, holding on to the thought of home. Their commander walked among them, voice steady, eyes sharp. "Listen to me," he said. "We are not just fighting for Earth today. We are fighting for a people who had no one else. Remember that when your boots touch the ground. Remember why we came." The soldiers nodded. Fear was there, yes, but so was determination. At last, the order came. The dropships broke away from the fleet, streaking down through fire-filled skies. Raiders shot at them, trying to cut them from the air. Some fell, bursting into flames before they could reach the ground. But many made it through, landing hard in shattered cities and burning fields. The Marines spilled out, weapons ready. What they saw was worse than they imagined. Buildings lay in ruins. Families huddled in the open, eyes wide with terror. The Arin looked at the humans not with anger, but with awe. For the first time, someone had come to stand with them. The battle on the ground began. Marines moved through the streets, firing at raider machines that crawled like metal beasts. Explosions tore holes in the earth, but the humans pushed forward, shielding the Arin with their own bodies. Medics ran through smoke, dragging the wounded to safety. Engineers turned rubble into barricades, creating small sanctuaries for terrified families. In one ruined square, a group of Arin children hid behind broken stone. A raider machine stalked toward them, weapons glowing. Just as it aimed, a human soldier leapt into its path, firing until the machine fell. The soldier turned, breathless, and shouted, "Run! We'll hold them back!" The children ran, their small hands clinging to each other, their eyes full of new hope. Above, the fleet continued its desperate fight. Raiders pressed hard, their ships larger and faster. Human vessels burned, some splitting apart in silence before vanishing into the void. A young pilot cried out over comms, "I'm hit, I can't," before static cut him off forever. Every loss was felt. Every death was heavy. Yet still, the humans fought on. In the command ship, Admiral Reyes gripped the railing as another screen went dark. "We hold," she ordered through clenched teeth. "We hold or they die." Her words spread like fire. Across ships, across cities, across battlefields, humanity dug in their heels. They fought street by street, room by room, sky by sky. They would not give up. The Arin could hardly believe what they were seeing. Their people had been abandoned by the galaxy, left to die without hope. Yet here, these strangers, these humans, threw themselves into the fire without hesitation. They bled for a people they had never met. An elder whispered through tears, "Why do they fight for us?" No one had an answer except the truth they saw with their own eyes. Humanity refused to walk away. The raiders grew frustrated. They had crushed world after world, but these humans did not break. Even when ships burned, even when soldiers fell, others rose in their place. They fought like a storm that refused to die. Night fell on Aretha, but the battle did not stop. Fires lit the sky, turning darkness into a bloody twilight. The humans stood beside the Aaron back to back, defending every street, every field, every child they could find. For every raider destroyed, cheers rose among the survivors. For every human lost, silence and sorrow filled the air. But their sacrifice only hardened the resolve of those who remained. The battle was far from over. The raiders still held the skies, still pressed with endless waves. But for the first time since the war began, the Aaron were not alone, and for the first time, the raiders faced something they had never seen before. Humanity standing between them and their prey. Unshakable, unyielding, unstoppable. The battle for Aretha dragged on into endless hours. Smoke filled the skies and the ground shook beneath the weight of fire. The human fleet was battered, their numbers cut almost in half. On the surface, Marines fought with bleeding hands and weary bodies, every step costing them more than they could afford. It seemed as though humanity would be swallowed by the storm. The raiders pressed harder. Their machines pushed through the ruined streets, their ships rained fire from above, and their cold voices filled the comms with cruel laughter. "You will fall," they sneered. "You are nothing but fragile flesh." But humanity was not broken yet. In the ruins of a shattered city, Captain Elias stood with his squad. They were low on ammunition, their armor cracked, their lungs burning from smoke. Around them, terrified Arin families huddled in a half-collapsed shelter. The captain looked at his soldiers and then at the civilians. He knew the truth. If they retreated, the Aaron would die. He raised his voice. "We hold this line. No matter what comes, no matter the cost, we hold." The soldiers nodded. Some smiled grimly, others clenched their weapons tighter. They were tired, but they were unshaken. When the raider machines came, the humans fought like lions. Every bullet, every blast, every drop of blood was spent to keep the enemy back. The ground ran red, but still the humans stood. Above them, in the command ship Resolute, Admiral Reyes stared at the battle reports. Loss after loss, ship after ship, pilot after pilot gone. Her heart ached with every name, but her voice did not tremble. "If we fall," she said quietly to her crew, "then they fall with us. But we are not falling today." The crew repeated her words in whispers, then in shouts. Across the fleet, those words became a promise. The raiders launched their final strike. Their largest warship, a massive vessel of jagged steel, descended from orbit. Its weapons glowed with enough power to tear apart a city in one shot. The Arin, watching from the ground, felt their hope shatter. How could anyone stand against such power? But the humans did not run. A battered squadron of pilots took formation. Their leader, Commander Hayes, opened comms. "We've come too far to stop now. Follow me." His voice was steady, though his ship was leaking sparks and smoke. The squadron dived at the giant warship, weaving through endless fire. Ships exploded around him, names vanishing into silence. Yet still they pressed on. At the last moment, Hayes drove his fighter straight into the enemy's core. The explosion lit the heavens, tearing the warship apart in a storm of fire. The humans watching from below raised their fists and shouted. For the first time, the raiders pulled back in shock. Their invincible fleet had been struck down by mortals who refused to yield. On the ground, the Marines felt the shift too. The machines hesitated, their movements uncertain. The humans seized the moment. With a roar, they charged, pushing the raiders back street by street. The Arin, once frozen in fear, joined them. Farmers picked up tools as weapons, elders shielded children, and the young ran messages through the smoke. Together, humans and Arin became one force. The turning point had come. The raiders, who had crushed dozens of worlds, were now bleeding. They had never faced prey that fought like predators, prey that chose to stand even when death was certain. And for the first time, the machines felt fear. Admiral Reyes gave the final command. "Push them back. Drive them from this world. Let them remember this day. Let them remember humanity." The fleet surged with new life. The Marines shouted with voices hoarse but proud. The Arin looked to the humans with tears streaming down their faces. Yes, the cost was heavy. Ships burned, Soldiers fell, but against all odds the tide of battle had turned. For the first time since the cry for help was sent into the stars, victory was not impossible. And in that moment, the galaxy itself shifted. Because humanity, fragile flesh from a dangerous world, had shown something greater than strength. They had shown resolve. They had shown heart. And the raiders, who had thought themselves invincible, now knew what it meant to fear the stubborn will of humankind. The battlefield fell silent at last. Smoke drifted like ghosts over ruined cities. The sound of weapons was gone, replaced by the cries of the wounded, the quiet sobs of survivors, and the whisper of the wind moving through broken towers. The raiders were gone. Their ships, once endless in number, had been shattered or driven into retreat. Their machines, once unstoppable, lay twisted in the dirt. The world of Aretha still burned, but it lived. Against all odds, it lived. Captain Elias stood among the ruins with what remained of his squad. Their armor was cracked, their bodies weary, their eyes red from smoke and grief. Around them, Irin families crawled out from hiding, blinking at the light of a new dawn. Mothers clutched their children. Elders leaned on broken staffs. Some looked at the humans with disbelief, others with awe. One small child, her fur matted with ash, walked up to Elias. She held a single flower that had somehow survived the fire. With trembling hands, she offered it to him. Elias took it gently, his rough fingers closing around the fragile stem. He knelt down, meeting her wide eyes, and whispered, "It's over now. You're safe." Tears filled the child's eyes, and for the first time since the war began, she smiled. High above, Admiral Reyes stood on the bridge of the Resolute. The stars looked different now, cleaner, brighter. The reports came in slowly. Heavy losses, countless dead, but the raiders were retreating. Humanity had done what no other race dared. They had answered a cry for help, and they had not abandoned those who called. The Admiral closed her eyes and whispered the names of the fallen, each one a wound in her heart. But she also knew those lives had not been wasted. "You did not die in vain," she said softly. "Because of you, this world still stands." The Irin people gathered in their shattered capital, what was left of it. Their leaders, covered in ash and scars, stood before the human Marines. Silence fell as they bowed low, their voices trembling. "We will never forget. When the stars turned their backs, you came. When all others ignored our cries, you answered. Humanity will forever have a place in our hearts." The Marines, tired and scarred, exchanged looks. They had not come for glory. They had not come to be praised. But hearing those words, many felt tears slip down their faces. For all the pain and loss, for all the blood spilled, it had been worth it. In the days that followed, the humans worked side by side with the Irin. They cleared rubble, tended the wounded, buried the fallen. Soldiers became builders, admirals became healers, and slowly life began again. Children laughed once more. Fires were put out. Gardens were planted in the ashes. Hope returned, fragile but alive. Elias sat one evening on the steps of a ruined hall, watching the stars. The little girl who had given him the flower sat beside him. She leaned against his arm and pointed up. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked quietly. He looked at her, then at the endless sky. "Maybe," he admitted. "But if they do, we'll be ready. And you won't stand alone anymore." The girl smiled faintly. "Because humans will come?" "Yes," Elias said. "Because humans will come." The story of Aretha spread across the galaxy. Whispers carried from world to world. Humanity had faced the raiders and won. Humanity, the young, reckless species from a death world, had stood where no one else would. Other civilizations listened, stunned. They remembered how they had turned away from the Irin's plea. And now shame and wonder mixed in their hearts. Some feared humanity. Others admired them, but all understood one truth. The galaxy was not the same anymore, because a distress signal had echoed through the stars. And only humanity had answered. And in answering, they had changed everything.